When you hear about Norland, you have probably already heard the comparison that it is Rimworld meets Crusader Kings. Now, I've been playing this game since early access. I've put in over 20 hours already, and it is time for another episode of Mole Thoughts. So, I would go so far to say that it's more Crusader Kings than it is Rimworld. Yes, it definitely takes the aesthetic from Rimworld, and a lot of the visualization which is happening in the game is very close to what Rimworld does. But I would say the whole Crusader Kings aspect is definitely weighing in a little bit more heavier than the Rimworld aspect. Like the whole Rimworld gameplay is happening on rails. There are a lot of things where you don't necessarily have the freedom a lot of people would have. The good news, I can already tell you, is the developers are listening. The game came out on Thursday, and we have already 4 patches where they made some kind of significant balance changes to what the people wished for, right? There were issues with the rings, there were issues with how people behaved and how quickly they were basically sliding into a depression. They already made some huge changes to that, and it's now much, much better and it's much more controllable. So, again, even if I'm saying something right now about the game, I would try to keep it as much surface level as possible to not go too much into the nitty gritty of the balance, because they seem to be already some major changes happening. But let's talk why people are calling it Rimworld meets Crusader Kings. So, first, of course, we have the aesthetics and all that, as I already mentioned. But I think what is also important is that at the beginning you create 3 pawns, and yes, you can choose what abilities they have, but every time you do that, they will get older. And I know if you are coming from RimWorld, age doesn't really matter too much. In this game, it does. This game it really does, because there is no way to save your characters, and death is a natural occurrence, but it's also very important because it brings change with it. If you have played any Crusader King game, you know how good, or well, how bad it can become when your king dies. That's not really a joyous event in those games, and it leads to a lot of lasting problems sometimes, right? And the same happens here. So age is definitely something to consider. You can then choose what's happening in the world, and even though the map is not procedurally generated, basically your allies around you are. So that means they will behave differently on the race you choose, the decisions you made. They have their own goals. They want to work with you. They want to work against you. They want to conquer the world. They have to defend themselves against the all-destroying world event, which, by the way, you can deactivate if you don't like that. And that is also important to note, there is another group in this game, and that is the church. And the church has their own goals, they're doing their own play, and they're not something you can just remove from the map. So you have to deal with the church and not getting on the bad side, because they can destroy you easily. Like, especially at the beginning, you are a speck of dust to them, right? And when you start out, it starts very much out like RimWorld, right? You have your 3 pawns, you are starting to get the resources, you are starting to build houses, and you are starting to slowly establish your little village. But what is really important, what makes this game already very interesting, even though you can only directly control up to, I think it's 5 or 6 pawns. I always forget the exact number. I think it's 5 if I'm not completely mistaken. You have tons of plebs which are also living in your village, because you're the king, the queen, the lord and lady, right? You are not doing all this work. You're not taking care of a tavern. You're not taking care of cutting wood or working on the farm. Like, this is what plebs are for. And the plebs are not directly controllable, like pawns are in Rimworld and in Norland, of course. But they're really important. They do all of your work, they take care of you, they will follow your orders, they will go to war for you, Or, well, if they slowly realize that you are not really the person they want to follow, they will try to dispose of you. Or when you have a lord which starts to hate you, and the lord is now trying to get some peasants around them and trying to usurp you, right? That's also something which can happen. So you have definitely those moments where your king is getting literally murdered in its sleep. And then, of course, you have your family, which is always not working for you, right? Like, you know how it is, family. They can turn against you, and that can become a problem. So there's a lot of intrigue in this game and a lot of cool story moments which happen. And the story moments in itself already feel pretty cool. Let me tell you a story of one of my first moments in this game. So I started out with a king, a queen, and a son, and my queen was abducted by bandits. So the problem was that my king in itself is not really good in fighting, so he needed a general to basically save her. And in that time, my king unfortunately became very frisky and did some dumb decisions. And the general, while he was basically plowing the blacksmith, my king, my general was going out there freeing the queen. And the queen really liked that. The queen was like, hey, well, my husband didn't came, but wow, this honk of a guy, oh my. And so basically, my king ended up with the blacksmith, while my queen ended up with the general. I divorced them and I remarried them with the other characters. But those two characters absolutely hate each other, and they have always like some duel going on. And at some point, somebody will murder the other, and this will cause even more drama in the town. I can already see it. Again, those stories are just great, right? They definitely fuel this feeling of, yes, I'm playing a Rimworld, I'm playing a Crusader Kings here. But it's not just that. There's also a world map, as I already said, which you can see in the background. And the world map is relatively big, but more importantly is that you have a lot of different factions on here. And everyone has their own goals, right? They will work with you together. They will try to attack you. They will try to conquer you. They would try to build an alliance. They would try to follow the church. You can actually send other people to those villages and try to cozy up with them. Or, well, you send out some people to spread some rumors. Or, even more direct, you send out an assassin and just kill the leader if you don't like them. Like, there's a lot of interactions you can have with the other towns around you, and it's mostly through menus. So this is why it feels very much like Crusader Kings, but it is still fun to do. The only thing which gets a little bit into the way of the fun, I have to say, is the church. Like, as I said, the church is very restrictive, and the church sometimes knows a little bit too much going on in the world, and I would love to see that dialed down, or at least giving us the option to dial it down, right? Another thing which we have to talk about is, as I said, age is a thing. And this also leads us to research. Research already takes quite some time. And that wouldn't be really a problem if we would have a similar system like in Rimworld, right? You're researching something, it is now yours. In this game, it is not the player which is basically researching the next thing, it is one character. So that means if the character with the knowledge dies through whatever circumstance, you will lose that knowledge. And it gets even so bad that, let's say, your king learned the ability to have a blacksmith, right? To build a blacksmith. You already have that building in your village. Your king dies, and now the building slowly starts to deteriorate till it gets completely destroyed, till you have another character who is learning the blacksmith research. And as I said, the researching takes too long. For that, the researching takes too long. Every time you're losing a character, you're losing quite a bit of progress. And you basically need one dedicated character, which is just doing all the research all the time. that you can actually keep up. And the thing is, you need the research. The research is not just some nice thing to have. Like, some of the stuff you can research is absolutely necessary to survive, right? So losing that ability and then needing another week or so to get all that knowledge back is just, it's not okay. Like, that takes a lot of fun away for me, at least right now. But this game is a great story creator. And as I said, the developers are listening. They are fixing a lot of things. They're working really quickly. They have worked over the whole weekend to put out some really important changes through like how you manage the rings, which is another currency in the game, which is really important and not too easy to obtain. How the characters react to having done a sin. Like, there's another thing which irks me a little bit. I have a character which is devious. They murder, they sleep around, they just have no morals. And that's what the character is, right? I chose the stats in a way that this represents the character. And my character is still walking close to a severe depression because he does all those things and he feels bad about it. I'm like, dude, you have no morals. Your stats, your origin story, all of the choices you make for the pawn at the beginning were chosen by me in the way that you are an amoral piece of shit. And you are still crying every night before you go to bed for hours. That's not fun, to say the least. That's not fun. So yeah, I would love to for them to remove some of the guardrails they have in the game over time and make it just more sandboxy. Like, the options are definitely there. I also love the fighting. I think the fighting is pretty fun. The weapons are breaking a little bit too easy. You craft, so all the armor, all the weapons you craft, they can break in the fight, and then they will basically draw their second weapon or something like that. And I sometimes feel like they're breaking a little bit too easy right now, but that's a pretty simple balance change they can do. But the fights are always fun. I love how you can also choose some orders, like archer staying behind, you are falling a little bit back and all that. Like, they have like cool formations you can do, and the fights always look fun. And I really enjoy this game. Would I recommend this game in early access is probably the big question. And the answer is yes, but don't expect a pure Rimworld in the medieval ages here. That is not what you will get. This game is trying to find its own path, and this game is trying to tell its own story. As long as you are aware of that, you will probably find a lot of fun in this game. As always, it is early access, so just wait till that phase is over, and then you will probably get a more detailed rundown from me. With that said, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like. If you still have some questions, let me know down below in the comments. And if you're new to the channel and you love strategy, management, and building games, then you should consider to subscribe. I would love to have you. With that said, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.